Welcome back to RezRootz, everybody. I am your host today, Emmanuel Bryant, and I am currently here with Jonathan Hines, where our episode today will be all about missions, what it takes to achieve those type of goals, what you can learn for those type of mission trips, and the idea mindset that you have to have in order to do these type of mission trips. So yeah, Hines, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. I woke up a bit tired today because I stayed up pretty late last night doing homework and just trying to fall asleep. So.
Relatable, my friend. And for you being here, like, where do you come from?
Well, I was born in Montana and spent the first 13 years of my life there.
Okay.
And through the Lord, we moved to New Mexico, about central New Mexico, a little place that is south of Albuquerque that no one seems to know where it is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And just now for the last almost 2 years of my life, I've been up here in Flagstaff for school.
Awesome. Yeah, we're glad to have you here in the Bible College. If you guys don't know, the first year that Jonathan joined here was also my very first year. So it's been an amazing time to be able to watch each other grow and to see each other develop in this new chapter of our lives. So when you said that it was God that sent you down from Montana to New Mexico, what do you mean by that?
Well, for starters, in Montana, we had a pretty decent living. Like, we had a lake nearby and we had a river nearby that was like within like 5-minute walking distance. And it had many fond childhood memories, but the rent was getting expensive. And my parents were looking for new land, and they stumbled across on, I don't remember what platform they were looking on, but they stumbled across a piece of land that someone was literally trying to get rid of. So they were selling it as cheap as they possibly could.
Okay.
Because my parents were looking into Arizona for a while, but then they stumbled across this one in New Mexico and was like, we're taking it. And then, that November we got ready to go and we head out.
Nice. So how long you lived in New Mexico now?
I left New Mexico just before 7 years.
Oh.
7-year mark.
Okay.
But,
all right. And now you're here in Arizona.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, I'm really glad you're here on the show, Jonathan. I'm glad you got to introduce yourself, because today, as I mentioned before, we're definitely talking about the Mission Immersion Trip. And to give you guys a heads up, back home, IBC did 2 trips this past 2 weeks ago, and one of them was the Mission Immersion Trip, where they went out to White River, Arizona on the Fort Apache Reservation, where they spent 6 days there with 17 staff, 3 staff members. Wait. Cut that part out. where they spent the next 6. My gosh, I can't talk right.
Where we spent the next 6 days with 16 other students and 3 staff.
And 3 staff, yes. Oh, wow. I don't know why that was hard for me to explain. But yeah. And so this Mission Immersion Trip, can you tell us about your experiences on it?
Well, for starters, I'm going to mention my anticipation for it leading up to the trip. Because I've always wanted to be invested into other cross-cultural ministry. Although I wasn't sure yet, didn't know that it was going to be cross-cultural ministry. But I always had a fascination for other cultures. So when I went to Broken Arrow, was the first ministry that I went to. And then this immersion trip would be my third, technically. I was really excited to go to Fort Apache, White River, or White River Fort Apache, whatever it's called.
Fort Apache.
Yeah, thank you. Fort Apache. I was really excited, but I also had an element of terror in it because this is my first time going out to the reservation with the intent on going and hanging out with the natives there. Because last year on our MIT trip, I was a freshman and I didn't really have the slightest inclination or desire to try and hang out with other people other than the group I'm still trying to get to know. So this year was different because I wanted to try and challenge myself and go out to the people. And a challenge that was.
Well, speaking of challenges, what would you say was the main challenge you encountered during your time on the reservation? And how were you guys able to address them?
Our main challenge on the trip was actually just the sheer amount of stuff that we wanted to do.
What do you mean by that?
Well, when we first came in, it was a Saturday afternoon. The only real thing we had was to socialize with the people at the church that just got out of a men's Bible study and to, help out with the oil change. But there wasn't too much activity, so we just spent the first day kind of just chilling. But then from there, our different connections started giving us stuff to do. So for most of the week, we had to split up into 3 to 4 separate groups to make sure that we can get to as much of them as we can. And we usually had a group that went to a school that was in, I don't remember what it's called, but it's the opposite direction of where Wright River is, because we stayed in McNary.
Okay.
It was, I don't want to say YMCA, but it has...
like the gym?
It was a Christian Indian Mission something. I'm sorry if I'm botching your name, by the way.
Well...
But no, we went up there, and we had a group go up there. Then we also had a group that went to the school there to do a bunch of cleanup. Then we had a third group that went to one of our connections to do some cleanup and some projects. And either we'd have a group that stayed there at HQ to do some cleaning and basic work, or we'd go over to the kennel early and, do that stuff. So.
And when you say the kennel, are you talking about like a dog kennel?
Oh, no. The kennel I'm talking about is a Christian youth group.
Okay.
Sort of like a privately owned boys and girls club would be the way I describe it.
Okay.
Or recreation center. Yeah, and I really liked the kennel. I just had a hard time connecting to the people there.
So what did they do at the kennel?
At the kennel, it was mostly just a place for kids that just got out of school to hang out, usually. So they were closed during the school hours, but then after school, they would open up and be available to the kids. And the kids would come in, they would hang out, play basketball, volleyball, outside. There's a couple of indoor recreation areas. And it's just an overall nice place. But I found out I had a really hard time connecting to the younger generation of Apache because, well, for starters, I had no idea what I was going to do to try and connect. So my first interaction with one of them, I never got his name because I just wanted to just respect his space and just be quiet. And all I did was just pass the ball back to him. So...
So would you say that was part of the challenges you faced? Not really knowing what to do?
It was part of it was honestly most of the challenge was just like with the stuff that projects and such, I was on top of that. But when it came to interacting with the native people in their culture, in their space, I was lost for words. It's just like, how do I do this? What have my classes taught me to do so far? Why am I brain farting?
The intro to missions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, I can understand how that can be quite a challenge for you. And it's kind of the main reasons why I wanted you on the show, because I know many viewers will see that you're definitely not a native.
Yeah, I'm Billy Ghana through and through.
Exactly. But, it's amazing because when it comes to India Bible College, we're all about reaching out to the natives, especially with our own natives coming back home to where we're from. And with Jonathan here, he's actually learning, especially with Intro to Missions, with an amazing teacher. His name is Rogers. Shout out to Rogers if you're watching. And in that class, it's really cool. He said, what better way to learn about natives and to teach and to minister to them from other natives, so he can get a better understanding on how to do ministry work when it comes to that time, especially what you said earlier with you wanting to do finances, you said?
No, I said I wanted to do sort of a business as ministry.
Okay.
Where my goal is to go onto the reservation start establishing a small business, train up a local believer to eventually take it from me. So
So like kind of
I'll
growing.
I'll have business's mission, discipling, and the freedom and the plan to being able to move to another spot when the Lord says it's time.
Wow.
So
I really like that. That's awesome because especially out on the reservation, especially for the Navajo Nation, we definitely need opportunities out there, such as work and especially, job opportunities. That's the word I'm looking for. So, yeah. The next question I have for you is, were there any memorable interactions or moments that definitely was your highlight?
Okay. There is one that I'll probably always talk about until my dying breath.
Okay.
And it is an interaction I had with an elderly Apache woman.
Okay.
For some context, this was on Wednesday night, and we were doing worship. And during the worship, she came up. I saw her come up, and she started to kneel down and pray. That's only what I saw. And I literally sat there for the entire song praying that someone who is more capable and would understand more would come up and help her. But by the time Tim came up to share his testimony, I was like, okay, no one's coming up. I'm going to go up. So I went up, I grabbed the tissue box along the way, sat down by her, and she was crying, wailing. Not super loud, but noticeable. And I started off just quietly, offering her the tissues. And she took them, and then she started talking about what was going on, but she was talking about it in her native tongue, which at that moment I felt really joyful, because not only am I hearing that native tongue being spoken and that she's comfortable enough to share it with me in her native tongue, but that also through my CSA, which is English Corner, shout out, I'm surrounded by a bunch of students who talk in their native language, and I have no idea what they're saying, but I've learned to listen and, to be engaged, even though I have no idea what to say or what they're saying. So through that, I was able to hear her out without knowing what she said. And then I asked her if I could pray for her. She said yes. So I prayed for her, and, I feel like my prayer was pretty generic, I guess, and broad. But given the fact that I had no idea what she said, I know that the Lord would translate it for her and, would make it work for her. Then I offered to help her up, and I realized I did it wrong because I held up my arm and she was too weak to pick herself up. Oh. Fortunately, Aaron came in and kind of did it helped me, showed me how to do it. Okay. At that moment, I was like, okay, I'll remember that for next time. Then I walked her to her seat and see if she needed anything else. So, but that's probably going to be the memorable moment that I'm going to remember the entire rest of my life.
Nice. I really like that. The chance for you to finally help in that situation. And like you said, of course, we're all not perfect. We tend to make mistakes, but I love the fact that you're in an area where you're willing to learn from that mistake, especially with Aaron being there to show you, hey, let's do it like this instead. I think that's really amazing that you learned that visually and mentally. So you definitely are ready for the next time you ever go out to another reservation or just helping people here in the community.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that. So, did participating in this mission trip change your perspective or deepen your understanding of the cultures out there?
Yeah. It changed a lot of things, this trip, because, I got a glimpse into what leadership roles looked like during MIT, because I was in a minor leadership role throughout as assistant to transportation and sort of an older student as well, okay, in terms of grade. Yeah. And I also got to experience, the difficulties of going out into another culture firsthand. Because up until that point, the closest thing I had to going to another culture, I would say would be Broken Arrow. But after that trip, I consider Broken Arrow as sort of a meeting in the middle where we bring something to you most of the way, but then you have to come over to us the rest.
Okay.
And it's just, and in the environment that Broken Arrow projects is like, okay, majority of the students that are, or campers that are going to come are going to be either Christian or someone who is thinking about Christianity. Whereas going out to them, you're going to a place where, at least for me, I had no idea like what their view is on Christianity or like anything. So it was much harder and more challenging for me to be incarnational, at least with my mouth and my action, or with my mouth mostly, because I had no idea how they viewed things.
Gotcha. I think I just want to dig a little deeper. So, with your deeper understanding of the culture, I know you said that you're having a hard time speaking it out or being able to talk to them in some sort of way. Like, I guess the question I'm looking for is, what would you probably want to try to do now since you now learned that experience? What would you like to learn now in order to possibly work better for God's glory in the future?
Well, for starters, I want to be more invested into like, I guess like what general res culture is like. Like, do they all have a lot of similarities or are they all different? And two, I want to be more invested into the particular culture I'm going to. So let's say for next year's MIT, we go to, I don't know, Ojibwe. I don't know. We go to the Ojibwe people, and I want to invest into, talking to students who either know the Ojibwe culture or are of the Ojibwe culture, and, do some internet searching and maybe try and find a book from someone who is of the Ojibwe culture that talks about it, and basically just try and learn as much of the culture so I could be more culturally sensitive, all the while knowing what to and what not to say more easily.
Gotcha. And
Because that's what I was worried was I might say something offensive or wrong and tarnish chances.
I think it's amazing that you are learning this in the classroom and also seeing it in action, especially with this mission trip that you did. So I just think that's really amazing. I really appreciate everything you're talking about, Jonathan. And because of everything we're talking about, I just want to ask you this question of, what type of lessons that you learned from this experiences? Anything to your awareness, to your spirituality, or even just in community?
Well, I personally learned a bunch of lessons. Like the smallest one, but pretty significant one in my book, would be the fact that when you are a videographer, you don't shove the camera in people's faces.
Yeah.
And I felt really bad for it, so I apologized about it in the next debrief. And, like, fun fact, I was told I didn't have to apologize about it, but inwardly I knew I had to apologize about it. That would be, I would say, this the smallest lesson. The biggest lesson would be how much of a challenge it's going to be being in cross-cultural ministry.
Okay.
With, as I mentioned earlier, my aim to do business as ministry on another reservation. And if I'm struggling to find a way to talk to these people because I don't understand how to talk to them, then that's a really difficult challenge level to match.
Yeah. All right. Well, and then would you say anything on the spiritual side by any chance?
On the spiritual side, I would have to say that, like, I learned that I kind of depend on myself and other people around me in my community more than I do God. Because looking back on it now, I had a really hard time remembering to pray outside of community moments. Like, on my own, it was like I had a very hard time. And like on my devos, like I didn't do too many devos either. So a bit of a negative lesson, but an important one where I kind of just depend on myself and the others around me and not lean on God more.
Gotcha. No, I'm really glad you got to learn that. I know a lot of us, including myself, we definitely fall into the area where we completely forget to pray. And yeah, I totally agree with you on that, Jonathan. So, yeah. So the next question. So, would you say that this mission trip influenced your future, as in your plans, your commitments, serving, or anything like that, either here locally or globally?
Definitely. Like, so before this trip, I was planning on basically attending a camp every summer where basically even year, no, even year I would attend Broken Arrow, and every odd year I would go to another camp, either in the US or, out of the US. But after this trip and the realization that I feel that camp ministry is closer to like a middle ground as opposed to going out to where they're at, it's like I've made commitments for 2-3 summers already where I'm going to go to Broken Arrow this summer. I'm going to go to a camp in Spain for next summer.
Oh, wow.
Yep. And one of our faculty invited me to a camp in Maryland.
Oh, wow.
So that's going to be my plans for the next 3 summers is to go to Broken Arrow for the full summer, then go to Spain for part of the summer and Maryland for another part of different summer.
Okay.
But other than that, I want to do more MITs.
Okay. Yeah, well, that definitely will do that every year. And that's exciting. I wonder what we're going to do next year. But within the trips to Spain and to Maryland, like, would you say this happened all because of this MIT trip?
No, they were planned. I had planned them before this trip.
Oh, okay.
So, and I want to do more MIT-like trips throughout summer. So,
okay.
Next summer I'm planning on, depending if timing lines up right, to take up IBC's opportunity to go to Mexico.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that's amazing. They also asked me on that, but I don't know about that just yet, just due to the plans and what God has for me at the moment. But I think the Mexico trip would be amazing. Yeah. So when it comes down to we're getting to the end of our episode, and I just want to say thank you, Jonathan, for being here and to give us more of an insight, especially on this last MIT you went on. And so for our listeners out there, I just want to say thank you for reaching here this far. Just give us a few more minutes because I have 2 questions left for Jonathan. And these ones are for the listeners, for you guys out there. And so, Jonathan, I just want to ask you, for our listeners out there, what would you say, any advice, any insights, anything that you want to let them know if they're interested in doing a missions trip such as this?
Well, for the missions trip, I would say everyone should at least try to go to one, especially if it's like cross-cultural. Even if it is like something that's not too different from your culture, like if it's a little bit different, you'll still learn a lot of things. But I think the more diverse you have, the more prepared you have to be, but it's well deserved. It's well worth it. And the planning is going to be very tedious at times, and you have to be flexible with a lot of things. But missions trips don't have to be, going out for most of your life. They could be a weekend trip. I mean, that's how short they could be for a missions trip. I think personally a week is a good time frame for a short-term mission trip. Mm-hmm. But, if you want to join a local missions group that is going out, you could work with their time, and you're still going to learn a lot in terms of what to and what not to do, how you can help, and also you're able to better support missionaries who are out there because you have an idea of, what they're going through.
Well said, Jonathan. I love that. And I can hear Roger's teachings through what you said. So it's amazing to see the teaching coming out for reals. Oh, my word. I don't know why, but I feel proud right now. Not like it was my teachings, but just to see Jonathan grow. It's amazing. I'm really proud of you, Jonathan. So, for our listeners too, is there anything you want to say to them to either inspire them or encourage them if they're possibly going on a mission trips very soon?
I would say, go through, do it. Just do it. And, if the Lord has already put it on your heart to go to do one of these, the missions trip, then, continue in prayer that the Lord will give you a more specific area that he wants you to go, or a specific opportunity to where you can go. And the Lord will provide more opportunities throughout your preparation and your time there. And, they may be little opportunities, but that the Lord will also enlighten you with the fact that even like replacing a small thing on a car, like oil, means a lot to some people. So what you do may feel insignificant, but it's large to the people you're ministering to. So it's going to have a massive impact, regardless of how little you think it is.
I really love that. Thank you so much, Jonathan. I honestly feel inspired because I love that analogy, especially like what they said, with God in the Bible with Paul saying that your tongue is like a rotor of the ship. A very tiny turn can turn the whole ship. So I love how you use that as well. Well, we reached the end of our episode. Thank you, Jonathan, so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. I just want to thank you all to the listeners to be here as well. We just want to remind you guys again to like, comment, share, subscribe, follow our page, follow our mission. And we're happy that you're here on a part of our journey, and proud that you're on the journey as well, Jonathan.
Yes. And thank you all again for chiming in. And thank you again for having me on the show.
For sure. Well, we'll see you all later. Have a good night. Have a good day. Hagonet.
See ya.